For most relationships that we have, it's going to require togetherness in order for us to build anything. Intimacy is simply into me see. It's you as an individual giving another person the opportunity to see into who you are. Mindfulness is something that's so important because nobody wants to be in a relationship, involved in a friendship, connected to anyone that just thinks about themselves. If you can't enrich a person, then you're going to find that that relationship is going to be shallow or it's going to end up dissolving. Today, we're going to talk about 4 ways that I believe we can nurture any relationship. Now, I want to say that this episode hinges off of last week. So last week, we talked about how to achieve meaningful relationships. And if you haven't listened to that episode, please, please, please go back and listen to it because it will change the way you approach any relationship in your life from here on out. But this one is going to go a little bit deeper and help you develop those relationships. And this is for any relationship you have, be it marriage, be it boyfriend, girlfriend, be it partner, whatever the case, business relationship, family, friendships, whatever relationship that you have. I believe these are 4 pillars that we need to implement in order to nurture those relationships. Now, I want to say I am not a guru, an expert on relationships by any extent of the word. I want to put that out there. These are just notes and things that I have taken from lessons that I've learned in my journey of relationship. So I want to bring them to you in the form of this episode so that it can hopefully help you. They've enriched my life and they've helped me, and hopefully they'll do the same for you. Now, when we talk about nurturing something, we're talking about caring for it. We're talking about being concerned for its growth or development. Thinking of a mother and a baby. When a mother nurtures her baby, she cares for the baby. She takes concern with how it grows and develops, and she does what she does based on the stage of development that baby or child is in. I say that because if we look at any relationship, every relationship in our life is going to require different things from us. Every relationship in our life is going to require a different element of who we are in order for it to grow and mature. So every relationship in your life is going to be different. So you can't approach your relationships with this cookie cutter mentality. So I say that to say the 4 pillars that I'm going to talk about. In some relationships, you may spend a little bit more time in one area than the others. In another relationship, you may zip through some of the areas and end up at another area in less time than it took maybe for another relationship. But the ultimate thing is that every relationship, just like any seed that you plant in the ground, is going to require time. I don't care what seed you take, an apple seed, watermelon seed, grape seed. You're not going to put that seed in the ground and get an apple tree tomorrow. You're not going to put that seed in the ground and get bushels of grapes tomorrow. It's going to take time. Now, one seed may require a little more time than the other, but regardless, it's going to take time. Now, I talk about time in the form of an acronym. First, I want to talk about the T in time, and that is togetherness. I believe any relationship that you're going to mature and nurture and grow or develop is going to require you coming together. And I'm talking about a physical coming together, that which has been kind of a little scarce in our climate these days because of Zoom meetings and remote this and remote that and work from home this, work from home that, all of this kind of shutting away and sheltering away and kind of being distant has given us less physical togetherness. And keep in mind, Zoom is nice. And those of you who've had to be on Zoom, like for the last 2-3 years in meetings or whatever the case may be, it's still different from coming together. I don't care what meeting I have, what colleague I have to talk to. Even I've had family Zooms throughout the COVID. It's still different from us being together in the same room at the same time, enjoying one another's company. So togetherness is going to be something that is going to be necessary in order for you to develop a relationship. Now, granted, you do what you have to do in the times that you have to do it. But if at all possible, if you can come together physically, come together. In those moments that you come together, you're going to have a lot more of enrichment and involvement than when you're on a Zoom call or in a remote type of position. So coming together. Now, keep in mind, coming together has to do with 2 individuals that enjoy one another, 2 individuals that enjoy their company, or a group of individuals that enjoy each other's company. You're not going to want to come together with somebody that you don't like or somebody that you don't enjoy being around them. this is for people that you enjoy. So if you like a person, you like their energy, you like being in their company, then find time to come together. Now, it may be different for every individual. Your ability to come together may not be as frequent as some others, but it doesn't mean you can't come together at all. It might be a weekly meeting, at a restaurant. It might be a quarterly outing. It may be just an annual get together. Come together when you can. But let me put a pin there, because there are some rare relationships that God, I believe, will bring into your life. And I say I believe that because he's done it for me in many instances. And those who have experienced it will understand what I mean. But there are times when you meet someone, and I call these divine relationships. You meet someone and you don't come together as often as maybe you would like to, be it because you live in different places or you just have different lives that require you to be a little bit more distant and have to do things. But these divine relationships are unique because no matter how much time you've spent away from one another, no matter how much time you're not together, when you get together, it's like you never missed a beat. It's like you've been syncopated and synchronized in the spirit. And that synchronization keeps you in step so much spiritually. And I say spiritually because I believe these relationships are spiritual. I don't believe they're beyond the human experience. You're syncopated so in the spirit that no matter how much time you've spent away from one another, when you link back up, when you come back together, it's like you never missed a beat. And if you had those relationships, you know exactly what I mean. Because of that kind of relationship, you may not come together as often, but the bond is such in the spirit that you don't require a lot of togetherness. But I say those are rare because they are. And if you have experience or you have those kind of relationships in your life, treasure them because they're not common. For most relationships that we have, it's going to require togetherness. It's going to require us coming together in order for us to build anything. Now, this has to do with romantic relationships, friendships, business relationships, whatever. If you're not seeing one another often, and often is relative. Often for some may be weekly, for others it may be monthly, for another relationship it may be quarterly, for another relationship it may be daily. You know what I mean? It's different based on the requirements of the individual, based on the requirements of the relationship. But coming together is the necessary component that I want to bring out. If you're not coming together on a frequent basis, then it's going to be very difficult for you to build a relationship. It's going to be very difficult for you to grow that relationship to another phase, to get out of that shallow phase and into a more solid and grounded space where you can really build a foundation for that relationship to stand upon. Togetherness is going to be necessary. Togetherness is going to require maybe some common interests. So you'll come together on your common interest. And if you're one who has a group of friends, those common interests could be different based on the friends that you have or the group of friends that you have. So you may have a group of friends that is 5 of you, but 2 of you like to go shopping. The other 3 don't. So you come together with that one person, y'all go shopping and enjoy going to catch the sales, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas all of you may like to go out to eat. So you come together to go out to dinner and chit chat and talk. So there may be different areas of coming together for your different relationships, but finding that common interest is going to be the place where you can begin. This is where your beginning starts, where you can begin to build something. If you're not coming together, it's going to be very hard for you to even start building a foundation. If you meet somebody today and you don't see them or talk to them for another 8 to 9 to 10 months to a year, you're not going to build nothing solid with them. It's just impossible to do so. So I want to say that coming together is going to be a necessary component for you to even start the foundation of building a relationship. Coming together. That's the T. The I in time is intimacy. Intimacy is so important. Some have said in the past, and I've heard it this way, that intimacy is simply into me see. It's you as an individual giving another person an opportunity to see into who you are. This is the layers. When I talked about being multidimensional and multifaceted and layered in our humanness, we are all that. We are all layered and multifaceted, multidimensional in our humanness. And in order for someone to build something with you, in order for you to build something with someone else, there's going to have to be a layer of intimacy that you allow that person in. And I say allow because intimacy requires you to open up. It requires into you. It requires you opening the door for another person to see into the heart of who you are, which whether it's physical, mental, or emotional intimacy, if you're not willing to open up, then it's going to be very hard for that individual to connect. And the relationship that you're trying to build will be shallow. And if you've ever had to build a relationship and it seems like it's very shallow, you understand that those relationships are not long lasting. They're not going to last very long because you're going to find a space or come to a place in life where you're going to need a deeper connection, a deeper relationship, a deeper resolve on what it is that you're connecting to when it comes to the two individuals building a relationship. And if you're constantly building on shallowness, just small talk and nonsense when it comes to your conversation, just, this very vague and small, you know what I mean? You talk about with strangers in the grocery line, you're not going to build much for that relationship. It's going to take very long for you to build something solid, if at all. So you're going to have to be open enough to allow somebody to see into you, which requires whether it's physical, emotional, or mental intimacy. And granted, I'm talking about the more emotional and mental side of things. The physical side, that's for adults to do, and that's a whole nother show. That's not this program. But when it comes to intimacy, mentally and emotionally, you have to be vulnerable. And if you're not vulnerable, if you're not susceptible to putting yourself on the line, putting your feelings, putting your emotions, putting your heart on the table, then it's going to be very hard for another person to connect and build something solid. Now, granted, this vulnerability or this intimacy must be a two-way street. However, you can't approach a relationship where you're waiting on the other person to be vulnerable with you and for you be vulnerable, because you don't really trust them. So you don't want to throw yourself out there too soon. Now, granted, that's maturity, because you don't want to be too vulnerable too soon, because you're not walking around letting everybody see into you. You're not walking around letting everybody be intimate with you. You know what I mean? There's a certain reservation that comes with that. And that is just required for people that you have spent enough togetherness with. That's why the togetherness is so important. You've spent enough togetherness with this individual to be able to say, okay, I think I can trust them with this piece of my heart, this area of my emotion, this piece of my mind, or who I am. You get what I'm saying? And as you build on that, and as they share and you engage in this way, now you can build a solid foundation upon which this relationship can stand. If you can't get past this intimacy or this vulnerability, and granted, it's risky. It's risky because not everybody's going to see things like you the way you do. Not everybody's going to understand you the way you do. Not everybody's going to accept what it is that you want to show, reveal, or place on the table. But that's why it's important. But the vulnerability is not for the other individual. The vulnerability is for you. It's going to keep you honest with you. If you feel in your heart a certain way and you want to share it with that other person, share it. And whether they respond the way you want or not is their prerogative. But what it is now you can say, I was true to who I am. I was honest with who I was and what I wanted to bring to the table when it came to that relationship. Now, it may take time and it may take layers or levels of you to reveal this vulnerability. You may not want to divulge everything. That's what I tell some of my ladies when I just have side conversations with them. You may not want to share all, your heart at one time. Just, spoon feed, because not everybody has the capacity to receive the multi-layer, the multi-dimensional side of your vulnerability. So you don't want to come to the relationship spewing all over the place, throwing up all over the place. You get what I'm saying? That can be overwhelming and somewhat toxic. You just want to measure it out. Share a little bit and move on and come back the next time, share a little more, building on that foundation. Building on it. When you build a house, you're not throwing 1,000 bricks up at one time. You're taking one at a time. So take that same approach when it comes to being intimate with whoever it is you're sharing with, or whoever it is you're trying to build a relationship with. Take it one brick at a time and allow them to digest and take that in and learn that side of you. And then another layer, another side of you. And then you'll learn a side of them. And before you know it, you got this beautiful edifice called a solid, beautiful relationship, friendship, etc. So I want to make it known that vulnerability is risky and sometimes scary, but you have to do it because you have to do it in order for somebody to even be able to connect with you on a deep level. And you have to do it so that you can stay true to who you are and you can stay true to what it is that you bring or want to share or want a relationship to become. So if you've had abusive past relationships and you've been treated a certain way and that keeps you navigating relationships in a certain way, if you don't share that, they won't know. You get what I'm saying? But now that they have this information, they kind of know now why you respond and act the way you do. I've had those kind of relationships in my past. I've had friendships where an individual is a beautiful person, but they suffered some things in the past and they trusted me enough to share those things. And when they get kind of wacky and crazy acting, I know why, because I understand the history. I understand the layers of the multidimensional side of that person. And I can just say, okay, they just having one of their moments. And sometimes I may have to check them or call them on the carpet about it, and that's okay. But that's where that solid foundation comes in, because now you have a relationship where a person can be honest with you too and say, okay, now here you go again. Let's back it up. Let's stop. Let's slow it down. You know what I'm saying? Because you understand why they behave and act. But if you're not sharing that and you keeping that all to yourself and nobody understands why you so crazy and wacky and out of pocket sometimes, they can't build nothing with you because they don't understand you. And that's where the intimacy and vulnerability takes you. It takes you to a place of understanding. It takes you to a place of being able to say, I know what I'm dealing with. I know who I'm talking to, who I'm building a relationship with. I understand why they do what they do. Do I like it? Maybe not, but I understand. And that understanding now gives the other individual a sense of relief, because now they don't have to take offense to it. They don't have to take it personal, because they know it's not necessarily them. It's just the history, you know what I mean? Or something triggered something. So they don't have to take it personal. They can come in love because they understand. So that's why intimacy is necessary, or vulnerability is necessary when it comes to relationship. It's going to be a key area in moving a relationship from one phase to the next. Now, togetherness is your first step. You just met, you just got to know these people, you just start working this job. These are your new coworkers. You haven't been knowing them a long time, but you kind of go out and you hang and you're coming together. Now, there's one or two on there that you kind of gel with, you click with, y'all got a vibe, y'all got good energy together, and now you want to build more of a friendship with them. And so you spend time, you share, you talk, you go out, you hang out outside of the group, you talk a little bit on the phone, you become more vulnerable with this person. Now you're building this relationship along, and now it can grow into something. After you've built or started or began the intimacy phase, the vulnerability phase, and granted, that vulnerability, you're going to have to constantly evolve around that. You're going to have to constantly come in and out of that door, because as you grow, as you evolve, you're going to have to continue to be vulnerable in order for that person, that individual, or those people to grow and evolve with you. And when they stop growing or evolving with you, then you're going to eventually see that relationship begin to kind of dissolve. So that intimacy is going to be a cycle of constant intimacy as you constantly or continually evolve and share, put your heart and your feelings, your thoughts, your perspectives on the line. So building from intimacy then to mindfulness. Mindfulness is something that's so important, because nobody wants to be in a relationship, involved in a friendship, connected to anyone that just thinks about themselves. And when you're not mindful of other people, that's exactly what you're doing. You're being selfish with your thoughts. You're selfish in only thinking about you, what it is you want, what it is you need, or what it is you need from them because of what you want to get out of them. So that's a whole nother layer of mindfulness, because some people are mindful, but they're mindful in a manipulative way. They're mindful only because they're trying to get something out of you. So they buy you this because they want that, or they do this because they want that. That's not true mindfulness. True mindfulness is, I just thought of you. Like they used to say when you used to give gifts in the past, it's the thought that counts. You're just thinking of an individual, not because you want something out in return, just because. This is so crazy, but sometimes it's hard to believe for some people. Some people, it's hard for them to believe that people are just thinking about them without wanting something in return. And I think that is such a terrible perspective to have, but it's so common now because people are just so used to everybody just being selfish and self-centered and only wanting something based on what they want from them. or giving based on what they want in return. And I want to put a pin here and say to people that not everybody wants something out of you. Not everybody that is nice to you or thinking or mindful of you wants something from you. There are still people in the world who are just naturally considerate and conscious of other people. Please understand that. Don't take this disposition that just because somebody is texting you, oh, hey, just thinking of you, that they want something out of you, or just because somebody bought something or treating you to something that they want something out of you. Sometimes people are just thoughtful just because they are thoughtful. That's where you have to get to understand a person. That's where you have to become intimate with a person in order for you to really know who they are. Because if you have this position where you think people only send you thinking of you texts or thinking of you emails or send you a little quick gift because they want something, then you're going to be fearful of every relationship that you encounter. Every relationship you encounter, you're going to be scared because you think somebody wants something from you. You think somebody's out to get something. Not everybody is. Not everybody has an ulterior motive. Some people are still considerate, and some people are still mindful of other people. That brings me to this point that in order to build a relationship, you must be mindful, thoughtful of the person, thoughtful of that individual. And that can show up in many ways. Keep that in mind. Thoughtfulness or being mindful of a person may show up in one way with you, and it may show up totally different in the person that you're in relationship with. You may be the kind that likes to send cards and send notes and emails or have quick calls, and that other person may be a one who is like, hey, what, you want to go out to dinner, or hey, let's go to lunch, or hey, you want to go to breakfast, or hey, a movie coming out, we should go check it out. They thought of you. Mindfulness. And granted, your level of mindfulness may be different from the person that you're in relationship with. Sometimes there are some people who are mindful to the point of overwhelmingness. They're so mindful that it's overwhelming. Every minute they texting you, every minute they calling you, every minute they at your door, every minute they sending gifts. That can be a little overwhelming. So there must be a balance to the mindfulness. There must be a balance to it. And that's even in romantic relationships. There must be a balance to it. And at the same time, don't have a selfish expectation. Don't have a selfish expectation. Just like the person that sometimes is mindful of an individual because of what they want, there are some people that are insecure that they are mindful of an individual, genuinely so, but if they don't get that same mindfulness in return, they feel some kind of way. Now, granted, if you are the one that's always calling and the one that's always inviting and always engaging, you might feel some kind of way. But at the same time, you should not put a demand on someone else just because you feel a certain way and you like to move a certain way. If you're the kind that likes to show love and send gifts and do all that all the time, and the other person is not quite that way, it's okay. It don't mean you can't build something with them. It just means you have different layers or levels of expressing your mindfulness. It's okay. It's okay. If you've spent enough time in the intimacy phase, you'll understand that individual and how they move. And the person that is the giver or more superior in their giving when it comes to the mindfulness will do it just because of who they are, with no strings attached, not expecting, not wanting anything. They just do it because that's what they want to do. And they won't feel offended if the other person doesn't do it as much, because they spent enough time in this intimacy phase that they understand each other and they understand how each other is wired. Some people love to do that. They love to give. They love to send stuff. And if you're one who loves to do that, then do it. Be honest, be who you are, but don't have an expectation of somebody else to match what it is that you do. That's where you begin to go wrong, because not everybody's going to think and do and move the way you do. But overall, you want to be mindful of one another. You want both sides of the relationship to be mindful of each other. Sometimes it may be a birthday text or tweet or whatever. And other times it may be going out to dinner or whatever and sending cards and gifts and flowers, et cetera, et cetera. But you want to show some kind of mindfulness when it comes to your relationships. And sometimes that mindfulness is just having a listening ear. How was your day? It's not always gifts. It's not always spending money. It's not always lavish trips. Sometimes it's just, how was your day? I'm thinking of you. I want to know how your day was. What happened? What's going on with you? How you been? That's mindfulness. All of that is mindfulness. So be mindful of other people and other people that you're trying to build relationships with. This is going to be key when it comes to having a shared experience and really being able to have this relationship that feels valuable, feels enriching. Bringing us to the next point, which is the E in time, and that's enrichment. If you can't enrich a person or a relationship, then you're going to find that that relationship is going to be either shallow or it's going to end up dissolving. Particularly if you're in a relationship with a person that has a vision and they're focused and working and in school or whatever the case may be, and all you want to do is talk about the Real Housewives of Atlanta and the Real Housewives of Potomac and whoever else, you know what I mean? And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's your conversation. But eventually that person is going to not see as much value in the relationship that they have with you because you're not bringing any value into that person, just like they should be bringing value to you. You want to bring value to the person that you're in relationship with. And in order to do that, you must go back, and that goes back to that intimacy phase. All of these hinge on the intimacy. After you pass the togetherness phase, everything else is going to hinge on intimacy. And if you've been intimate enough with that person and you've shared and you're constantly showing that layer of vulnerability with them, then when they get to this area of enrichment, they're going to know how to bring value to you. Now, you want to bring it in an authentic way. You don't want to be overly conscious and intentional of trying to find a way to bring value to this person. When you're hearing what they're working on or how they're moving and what they're talking about, when you come across something, you bring it to their attention. When you hear about something, you bring it to their attention. Or you may see an article and you just say, oh, look at this. Or this might be something you could think about. You bring value in little ways, not trying to become what you think they need in order to see you as valuable. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be inauthentic to who you are in order to try to be something that you think they want you to be. Be who you are. Just bring value in the way that you can bring value. Sometimes that may be bringing resources to their attention, sowing into their vision, or just being an encourager to whatever it is they're working on, you know what I mean? Or a listening ear when they're dealing with some tough situations in their journey. All of those things are valuable to people. And if you're not bringing any value to that relationship, and I'm talking about beyond money, beyond the shallow stuff, beyond the physical as well, if you're not bringing any emotional and mental value to that relationship is going to eventually dissolve, or it's going to become a relationship that you spend a little less time with. You still like them, you still love them, but you're not as committed to the time that you put in because it's not bringing as much value as it needs to in this space of your life. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to be in that space. If you go back to last week's episode, you move somebody out of one category into another. It's okay. It's okay because not all relationships are going to last or be the same in every season of your life. And it's okay. But if you want to nurture, if you have a person in your life and you saying, I want to nurture this relationship, I love this person, I love their friendship, I love who they are, and I want to nurture this relationship, then bringing your togetherness, the intimacy, the mindfulness, and bringing enriching things, ideas, thoughts, support to that relationship is going to give you something to build on so that you can have a relationship that lasts, because you're going to have different seasons in your life. And trust me, the shallow relationships are not going to be beneficial to you in some of those seasons of your life. You're going to need those solid relationships, those ones that have some depth and have some support, that have been dug deep in order to have a foundation. You're going to need some of those relationships when it comes to certain seasons of your life. The shallow ones are not going to get it. And if you have a relationship that is shallow that you want to develop, allow it to develop in its own timing. So you don't want to force anything, but you want to keep these pillars or these elements, togetherness, intimacy, mindfulness, and enrichment, in the forefront of your mind. And as you come together, as you become more vulnerable with the person, as you think of them and consider them in ways that you may have not in the past and continue to do so, and you bring value in ways that you can, and you're going to find that the relationship is going to eventually evolve on its own. You won't have to force it. You won't have to make it happen. And I think sometimes that people feel like they have to do that because they want a relationship to happen so bad that they force it. And that's where you start to irritate people. You start to annoy people because you're trying to force things and not allowing them to fit naturally. I think when we allow the relationships to fit naturally and we keep these pillars in mind, we end up with relationships that are very beneficial and ultimately built on sure foundations that will allow them to last throughout the seasons, the various seasons of our lives. So that's my episode for you today. The 4 ways to nurture any relationship you have: spending time together, intimate, vulnerable situations, being mindful of the individual, and bringing enrichment, support, bringing things to that relationship that will build value ultimately. And time ultimately is what it is. And if you put the time in the 4 pillars and you allow time to take its course, you'll have a relationship that is beneficial. So that's my episode for you today, and I hope this has helped you. And until next time, this is Cornell Jermaine, and you are listening to the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. Until next time, let your soul be made whole. Take care.